The Monte and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite four-letter word. California wine, New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
So here's the deal. I have pitched Dark Side of the Ring more wrestling stories, and I want to know if you guys know anything about him or what you would think.
Go ahead.
Buck Zumhofe.
That would be a fantastic Dark Side, right, Jimmy?
He's still alive. He's in prison. His daughter was a wrestler. I think it would be fantastic. I've reached out to Buck Zumhofe on my own in the last 2 years, and he's got an attorney that works with him. Very, very bizarre human being. He probably will never get out. But if you know the story about Buck Zumhofe, see, he's not Jimmy Snuka. I will tell you something nobody's ever said publicly. The fellow that we mentioned earlier, that ratted out wrestling on 2020. What did I say his name was?
Eddie Mansfield.
Eddie Mansfield. I was on the phone with Eddie Mansfield. He's a very interesting guy to talk to. He's always Eddie Mansfield. He's never not Eddie Mansfield. He is one of the most entertaining motherfuckers I have ever talked to on the phone, whether you agree with what he did or you didn't. Let me explain. He told me that he dated, and this has never been made public, and I'll share it with this show for the first time. See, nobody gets me out, nobody asks. He dated Jimmy Snuka's deceased girlfriend weeks, if not months, before she was murdered. Did you know that?
We did not know that.
He's got pictures.
Really?
Eddie Mansfield dated her in Los Angeles when he was wrestling in L.A. under Judo Gene LaBelle. And he knew her. And they were kind of splitting time with her. He would date her, and Snuka dated her. Here's what's very interesting. And he told me this story about 2 years ago. And it still holds water. Jimmy Snuka is related to a lot of people that are currently in the WWE, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Isn't it interesting that no matter what the situation is, anybody associated in the lineage of families with Jimmy Snuka gets a push, male or female? What he told me is he contacted Jimmy Snuka after she died. It was his girlfriend. He had her stuff. He wanted to get it back to the family. There was a lot of communication between him and Jimmy Snuka, and they remained friends. He told me, Eddie Mansfield, that Jimmy Snuka told him that the two other people that were involved in her murder were Afa and Sika. They were there. And that if they kept their mouth quiet as to what happened and only pinned it on Jimmy Snuka and Vince McMahon could get Snuka out of it, that the McMahons had promised that family that as long as they're alive, their lineage, their family members will always get top billing and push. They will always have a job. They will just keep your mouth shut. Afa and Sika had something to do with that murder, to cover it up, to get him out of town, whatever the case was. Now, I don't know how much of this is in the police reports and stuff. I haven't looked at it. But Eddie Mansfield is one of these guys where you're like, yeah, whatever. You saw a UFO in downtown Manhattan, and you don't believe him until the UFO lands in Giant Stadium. Like, he is that guy. Like, bullshit, Eddie Mansfield, you're full of shit. And then all of a sudden he goes, oh, yeah, let me show you the pictures. I dated her. And now there's also been some reports, and it's a very short-lived part of the interview, but if you watch an interview with Ox Baker, they talk to him about Jimmy Snuka, because him and Jimmy Snuka were close. Ox Baker is now deceased, so is Jimmy Snuka. He tells a story about Jimmy Snuka, that the reason she kept dating wrestlers is she wanted to break into the business. She wanted to be a professional wrestler. And Jimmy Snuka actually gave her a pile driver. He was showing how to do a pile driver on the bed, and he slipped and gave her a pile driver on the floor. There was an interview with Ox Baker done years ago where he talks about this. Supposedly, Afa and Sika were there. Part of McMahon's deal to them is as long as you keep your mouths quiet, I'll always give you top billing, and I'll always take care of your family. And whether you believe Eddie Mansfield or me or anybody, It's kind of interesting because everybody in that fucking family gets top billing, no matter how good they are, how over they are. How long did it take? What's the guy's name that was the champion forever?
Roman Reigns. Yep.
I mean, people were begging him not to be. I mean, even the Smarks were like, God, we're done with him years ago. They never, ever waver, no matter what you tell Vince McMahon or the McMahons, or they will never, ever bring those guys off the top billing. And Eddie Mansfield and several other people involved in that think it has to do with that murder.
Dude, that's a lot of information you're giving us in one shot, man. I got to tell you, incredible. James,
you guys got to get me on instead of Doink the fucking clown.
You ain't kidding. We got to talk. We got to get you back for a full interview. I got another guest on. I want to thank you again, man. Incredible. Thank you for coming on at such short notice, and what great stories, man. Unbelievable, dude. Let's
well, and I'll tell you what, I'll leave you with this. By the way, check out jimterrytv.com. But I will leave you with this. My roommate in the Arena Football League years ago was George Murdoch. George Murdoch is currently on Fox News. He's Brodus Clay. I've got a fight story with him, and I lived with him for almost 9 months in Kearney, Nebraska, playing for an arena football team called the Tri-City Diesel. He was an incredible offensive and defensive lineman. You guys want to sit down and talk stories? We'll talk about fucking stories with me and him back in the day when we were roommates together all them years ago before he ever got into bodyguarding or anything. I got stories on George Murdoch for days. But thank you, guys.